Welcome to Toy-Polloi. Parental guidance. This video contains scenes of Lego destruction.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and today we're going to be restoring this vintage M.A.S.K Rhino. Now this is a toy line that lots of people have asked me to work on. I get more messages than any other about fixing up M.A.S.K toys, so today this is going to be the very first of my M.A.S.K projects. Now this has been kindly sent to me by John from Illinois. He sent me a surprise package a few weeks ago and I had no idea what was inside it, and this was what was there. So it is the remains, I say a good part of the remains of a vintage M.A.S.K Rhino, and there are a few things missing and there are a few things broken, so it should be a fun project because I've not worked on this vehicle before. I've not really sort of even played with this toy line before. I have one figure but I cannot find it, so this is now my sort of whole M.A.S.K collection in front of me. So what we have here, as I say, is the Rhino. He included one figure. This is Bruce Sato. I've actually just ordered Matt Tracker on eBay, so hopefully that will turn up before I finish this video. This guy doesn't have his little M.A.S.K helmet, and the Matt Tracker I've ordered doesn't have his M.A.S.K helmet, but I'm hoping I can find those in time. Now let's take a look at the vehicle and I'll show you what's wrong with it and what we are going to be fixing up today. Apart from the fact that this does need a very good clean, which we'll be dealing with in a minute, there are a few broken areas that will need fixing. The missile that fires out of the launcher, as you can see, is supposed to have 3 prongs on it. One of those has snapped off, and I've been looking for parts for this just to see what sort of prices they go for, and they are crazy money. So we will be repairing this because I can't afford to buy the parts that are missing. So that one we will repair. We'll make something from scratch to replace that missing fin. We then have this sort of bit that flaps up at the back here. It should fit onto this section here, and as you can see, one of the hinges has snapped off. That's what the hinge should look like, and this side has snapped off, and I'm going to say it snapped off a long time ago. There's the residue of old glue there, so we'll need to make something from scratch to fix that up. I think that should be possible. This plastic looks like the sort of plastic that will work really well with Plastic World, so I'm going to use something like 1mm or 2mm styrene sheet. Most likely I will do the same with that as well. If we turn this vehicle around, you can see overall it's actually in really quite good condition. It's dirty, as I say, but the chrome is in nice condition. Some of the stickers are peeling off. We can re-stick those. None of the stickers appear to be missing. All of the functions work as well. If I press that button on the back, this pings out, and that pings out quite nicely. If I press the other button, the ejector seat works on this side, which it does. We have one issue with the door though, and that is the wing mirror. This has been bent and broken. The top part of it is snapped and the bottom part is very bent. You can see it's supposed to be sticking out horizontally like the one on the other side. So we're going to have to take that off, try and straighten it up and repair the broken bit at the top. There's also some chrome wear where it is bent, so we'll see if we can fix that up. Then if I turn it around, as I have said, it is very dirty. Actually, if we open this up, you can just about see in there some creature has made its little home just about in the back there. I'm not sure you can actually see that, but there's the remains of some sort of creature stuck to the back wall there, so that's what I mean. It's dirty. It's obviously been in a loft for a long time, and yeah, there's things growing and living inside it. So this will give a good clean. We'll mend those pieces and mend the top part and the missile. Then if we go to the back wheels, this is the sort of separate little off-road type vehicle that's supposed to detach from the back. It does detach all nicely. We have the mud flaps, but we're missing the little hatch that goes on the top here, which is the hatch that's also sort of supposed to be the tow hook. Now I had a quick look on eBay just to see if I could buy one, and they were sort of 30 or 40 pounds, and it seems actually if I was to buy the parts I needed to fix this up, I might as well buy just a complete one, because the parts on their own cost more than a complete one of these would set me back. So I'm going to make this missing piece. Again, I think it shouldn't be too hard to do. Something like a 2mm styrene sheet and some bits of Lego to make the pegs and just a bit of creativity, and then paint that chrome. I think that will look the job. So that's my plan for this. Basically, I'm not going to replace parts. I'm just going to mend all the pieces I have here, which I think will be quite an interesting project. First up though, everything does need a good clean. I'm going to take this down to my sink and use hot soapy water and a toothbrush to wash all of the dirt and grime out of this and make it look as good as I possibly can. I won't be submerging this because there are metal pieces in it, and also it does, as I say, have reasonably good stickers that we can salvage. So I'm basically going to try and get this clean but without getting it too wet. So let's go and give this a good clean first, and then we can start repairing the broken pieces. with everything washed, we can get to work on making the first repair. And I think I'm going to start with this flap because I think it's going to be the easiest and simplest of all of the repairs that I've got to do. As you can see here, there is a hinge piece on one side. On the other side it has snapped off, so we have to recreate that, and to do that I'm going to be using some 2mm styrene sheet. You buy this in various sizes of sheet. This is an A4 piece, and it comes in different colours. This is white, I have black as well, but for this instance I think a bit of white will do. So I have a little offcut here that I keep. Anything that I sort of work on, if I sort of cut bits of this stuff off, I always keep it because you never know when it's going to come in handy. So what we've got to do is sort of make a shape out of this styrene, and the easiest way to do that is just sort of trace it on there. So here's a piece of, as I say, 2mm styrene. I'm just putting that on a block so that I can rest this easily on the top of it. I will mark this out and then cut it out with some plastic nippers and a knife and sort of file it down till I've got about the right shape, and then we can sort of test it and see if we can get it to fit properly. As you see, there is a little sort of dimple on one side. Again, that should be easy to do. We can just cut a small piece of styrene off, plastic weld it in place and file that down. I think we should be able to make something that works really quite well. At the moment I'm not worrying about the colour either. I will paint this in the end. So yeah, let's just get cutting and see what we can make. After only a few minutes work, you can see I have this little piece of styrene that now matches the missing hinge piece, so we can now start trying to fix that onto the other side. I've not put the little dimple on yet, I'll do that at the end. Where this has snapped, it's not snapped particularly neatly, so I'm just going to take a file and carefully file the edge of this down so that it matches the shape that I have made. Again, it won't take very long to do. This plastic is quite soft, and I'm hoping this plastic will work very nicely with plastic weld. It feels like the sort of plastic, and a lot of these old toys are made from the same types of plastic, especially old Star Wars vehicles. And as this is a Kenner toy, I'm assuming it's going to be much the same. So you can see I'm just sort of trying to file that piece down so it matches this new piece I've made, just so that it fits on quite snugly. I think that will work quite well. So we'll attach that piece onto there now. As I say, I'm using plastic weld. This is EMA plastic weld, very good for this sort of project because it's not really a glue, it actually sort of melts the surface of the plastic and forms a very strong bond between the two surfaces. So to apply this, I'm going to use a paintbrush. Just put a small amount on the end of the paintbrush. We'll rub it onto the piece of styrene just to get this starting to sort of melt a little bit. Once it has melted a tiny amount, if I'm quick, it evaporates very quickly, so you have to be very quick with this. I can push that in place. I can feel that's already starting to bond. You can feel the surface is getting quite tacky. And now I can rub a tiny bit more plastic weld just along the join, and we'll let a capillary action work its magic and fuse these two pieces together. I've given the plastic weld time to set fully. Sometimes this takes about an hour depending on how much plastic weld you put on and what the surfaces are like, but you can see that is now pretty firmly held in place. I've also sanded down the little peg that I've made there, so we've now got just a little dimple on the end, and we can do a test fit. So let's get the vehicle out, and we can just slot that in one side, and we'll slot the unbroken one in the other side, and there we go. We've now got a working set of hinges. Obviously it is white, so we need to sort that out, and I'm going to give that a quick coat of paint. I don't have any paint that is this particular shade of purple, but I've got a few that are fairly close. I have this purple here, which you can see is not too bad. I think with a bit of extra red added to that and maybe some white, I can get a fairly close match. The hinge is actually pretty well hidden. You can only just about see a little bit there, and if I flap that down, you can just see a bit at the back. So even if it's not a perfect match, we can hide it you know, well enough, and I think that's all that needs to be done on this. But the actual hinge itself works really nicely and was a pretty simple fix. So let's get the paint on, and then we'll class that job as done. After a couple of coats of paint and a top coat of a clear varnish, I've actually used this satin varnish, this Vallejo stuff, just to make the sort of final tone of it look a little bit more shiny. I've ended up with that, and I'm really quite happy with how it looks. The colour match is not perfect, but it's as close as I will be able to get with the paints that I have. We can now drop this onto the vehicle, and I don't think you would notice that this has been repaired. The amount that you actually get to see with the sort of new bit of paint on it is so minimal. I think it will be very well hidden. So we'll just drop this on here like so. There you go, works very nicely. And yeah, I think most people wouldn't even notice that that hinge had been repaired. I'm very happy indeed with how that has turned out. For the missing cover on the little off-road vehicle, it's supposed to sort of half be a sort of tow hook and half be a little hatch that flips back. And I found a couple of images online. Someone was selling one on eBay, and they'd taken some reasonably good photos of what the hatch should look like. And I'm going to be using that as my basis to make something from scratch. As I say, trying to just buy this piece on its own is so astronomically expensive, it's just not worth it. And I know that I can make something that will do the job and look really quite sort of convincing as the hatch here. So I'm going to make something from scratch. So using those photos that I found and a ruler and a compass, I've been able to sort of roughly work out the shape that I need to cut out, and I've marked this onto some 2mm styrene. Now this is not going to be an exact copy of that original piece. I'm using my own sort of interpretation of it to make something that will fit, and it's also going to be something that I know that I can make out of styrene, so I've sort of simplified some areas, but I'll get something that will certainly look the part. So this is a 2mm styrene sheet. I'm going to cut this out of here, so you can see I've got a circular piece, and I've got the little sort of tow hook section. I've got some other little lips at the back which I'm going to add some pieces of Lego to. But really the first thing to do is actually cut this basic shape out, and then I can start adding pieces to it. I actually want the end piece to be about 3mm thick, so I'm going to be sticking another layer of this underneath to make a little lip so that it sort of sits around this edge here. And as I say, we need some sort of little posts to come down to hold bits of Lego to make the little hinge section. But the starting point is to cut this out and get this all shaped, so let's get cutting. So that's the first piece cut out, and you can see I've got the basic shape of the hatch, and this will just fit over the top pretty much like the original one did. So you've got, that's a sort of the tow hook section, and then we're going to have a hinge at this back point so that that hatch will lift up. But at the moment it doesn't really look like the final hatch. We need to put a second layer to it. The original hatch has a bar going across the back here and also a lip all around the edge on the underside. So I'm going to cut out another piece of styrene. This is 1mm styrene sheet, and I've already marked it up so you can see exactly what I'm going to cut. I'm basically going to cut this shape out and then cut that hole in the middle, and if we stick that onto the bottom of here, you'll see we'll end up with a bar across the bottom and then a lip around the edge on the underside, and that will start to make it look a lot more like a hatch. Then we can start constructing the other pieces. So again, I have to cut this out. This is 1mm styrene, so this is actually slightly easier to cut than the 2mm styrene. I'm just going to use a scalpel to score around the edges and then a pair of pliers to push out all the pieces. Now I have two pieces, so this is the inner piece, so this will be on the underside of the hatch, and you can see that forms the little bar across the back that you see in the original ones. And if we turn this over, it's now got a bit of a lip on it. I think that is starting to look more like a hatch than just the flat piece that I'd originally cut, and it will certainly sit on here quite nicely. So what I'm going to do now is plastic weld these two pieces together so I can then start fine tuning the outer edge. At the moment I've only sort of nicely cut out this inner piece because that piece obviously once it's stuck on we won't be able to modify it anymore. Once I've stuck these two together I can then sort of fine tune these edges and make sure that everything lines up neatly. So yeah, let's get this plastic welded together and then we can start fine tuning. After smoothing all of the edges down, I've now added a couple of little bits of styrene just to the edges at the back, and that's where the hinge is going to be, so we can drop that onto the back part. And you can see those little pieces just line up with the holes that are left on the back portion of the truck, and we need to add something to be able to rotate that upwards. And the piece I'm going to be using for that is a piece of Lego. So you can see here I have a piece of Lego. This is actually a portion of a Lego lance. These are very useful bits to have if you're fixing any sort of toys. These are ones that I use very often. I'll put the number of the Lego piece at the bottom of the screen now. So I've just cut a piece of that off, and you'll notice that it fits almost perfectly into the little slots that are on the back there. So what we've got to do is attach this bar to the new hatch that I've made. So I'm going to drill a couple of holes through. Lego pieces are generally all the same size and same diameter, so I know this is a 3mm little piece of Lego, so I've got to drill two 3mm holes either side of this. I'll start by drilling a small hole and then I will enlarge that to a 3mm hole, and we can then plastic weld that in place, and we'll have something that really does start to look like a hatch. I might add some more details to the top of it because the original one seems to have a few little bits of details and a few sort of rivets and things, so I might add that to the top of it. The underside I think is pretty much done. By the time this is painted up it should look really quite nice. So yeah, let's get these holes drilled and we'll put this bar in place and then see how well the hatch works. Now that I've got those 3mm holes, I can take this piece of the Lego lance and insert that through those, and they should fit quite snugly. I'm used to using Lego pieces, so I always know pretty much the right size hole to drill. You can get a really quite snug fit, often one that doesn't involve then using glue or anything to hold it in place. You can see here that that is a really quite nice push fit. And there we go, that looks a whole lot more like a hatch. So let's bring in the back of it. We can drop this in place and hopefully this will work. Hey, it does. That's always quite satisfying. So you can see now I've got a hatch that actually fits in place. It looks quite nice. I think what I'm going to do is add a few more details to the top of it. The top of it is a bit flat at the moment. You can see it really is just a flat surface. So I'm going to add a few little bits of detail, just some little cut-offs of styrene sheet, the 1mm stuff cut into some strips or something, just to make a few more details. And then we can go about painting that and making it look like the sort of chromed finish of the original one. But overall, I am very happy with how that is working. It's really fitting quite nicely, and I think by the time that is painted you wouldn't even notice that that is something that I've made from scratch. So yeah, let's add a few final touches to that and then we'll paint it. And here is the final hatch. I've just added a couple of little details to the top of it just to break up the fact that it's a flat surface. I probably could do more, but I don't think it's going to be necessary. Certainly by the time this is on the vehicle you don't notice the fact that this is handmade like that. While we've got Bruce riding it, it's looking really good. If we take Bruce out and then fold it down, you can see that really doesn't look too bad at all. Obviously it's not chrome, but that is what we're going to deal with next. So the overall shape and everything I'm happy with. Let's get to painting this and make it look as chromy as we possibly can. Now to make this piece look chrome, I'm going to be using some paint that I've not used before. It's just arrived and I bought this from a company called Stuart Semple. It's called Mirror and it's supposedly incredibly good. It's supposed to give you a really nice mirror finish, but it is extremely expensive. This tiny bottle here, including postage, costs £35. So I'm going to be using this as many times as I can just to make it sort of well worthwhile. It's solvent based, so you won't be able to wash your brushes out with water. I've actually got a little bit of white spirit in here. And as I say, I have never used this before, but I've seen people get some very good results with it. So that is what we're going to be trying today. This is my first time of opening it. Let's have a look inside. You can see there it really does look very nice and very chromy, so hopefully this will work. I'm going to put an incredibly small amount in here because it is so expensive. Apparently it goes really quite far, so you don't need to put that much in. Let's just give this a go and we'll see what happens. Hopefully we'll get a very nice result. Oh yeah, that is really quite nice actually. Supposedly you put on a few coats. The first one sort of evens everything out, let it dry, put a second coat on, and we'll end up with a very nice chrome finish. But I'm already quite impressed with this. Normally I'd use Molotow liquid chrome pens, but I thought I'd actually try something new today and see what happened. Right, well I decided to come back to this chrome because I just wasn't happy with the finish that I'd managed to achieve. So what I did is sand it all down. I actually gave it a quick undercoat just to hide any blemishes. It was a spray undercoat, and I'm now applying it again and I'm getting a much better result this time. I realised my mistake on the first one. I was just putting it on way too thick. This stuff, you need almost nothing on your brush and just a real light coat. Brushed across, let it dry, and do another coat a few minutes later once it's had time to dry, and you're getting a much better finish. I'm losing all of the brush marks that you saw in my first attempt, so there definitely is an art with this, but it's a little goes a very long way. So again, a tiny amount on the brush, and I can just brush this on, and it's starting to sort of chrome up quite nicely. So yeah, don't rush it, do a little bit and then wait and then do a little bit more, and you can see that the chrome finish is starting to come through. So I'm going to sort of persevere with this and do a few more coats, and I think by the time I've done that I'll get a very nice result. The first time I was just putting it on a little bit too thick, and it's not that sort of paint. It's not like acrylics. You've really got to go thin with it. So let's do this again and we'll see what the end result looks like. So here is the hatch after about 4 very thin coats onto a spray painted undercoat, and you can see I've got quite a nice shine to that, and it is quite reflective. There are still a few little brush marks in it, but I think that looks a whole lot better than the first time I did it, and certainly by the time that's on the back of the Rhino I don't think you will notice. And yeah, I think that's much better anyway. So there is a bit of a skill to using this mirror chrome, and I'm just sort of learning it as I go along. You need a very small amount and you put it on very thinly and in a few layers, and you can see it does build up. I think on surfaces that aren't as flat as this you would probably not see the brush marks so sort of clearly. This is a very flat surface, so they really are showing up. On the underside you can see it works really nicely. So yeah, a little bit of practice and I'm sort of getting happier with the end results, but I think for now I'm definitely going to leave that as is. And here is the finished hatch. As you can see, the chrome paint works really quite nicely. If you look up close you can still see it's a little bit sort of painty, but the overall effect it gives is very nice, and as you can see the hatch does fit quite nicely onto that back section there. So if I unclip this section now we can test it with a figure. So I've got Bruce here, as you can see we can lift up the hatch, we can sit old Bruce in, and he can then drive that around quite nicely. I'm really pleased with how this has turned out, considering it's just made out of a few sheets of styrene sort of cut and shaped and a little bit of Lego to fit it onto the vehicle. It does a very nice job, and certainly a whole lot cheaper than what I could buy on eBay. As I say, buying an original one would cost me, I think the cheapest one I saw was about £25–30. So this has essentially cost me nothing because I already had the sheets of styrene here and I'd already bought the paint for another project. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a pretty good fix. For the missile with its missing fin, we can use exactly the same techniques that I've shown you on the previous two fixes, and we'll make this out of some styrene sheet. Now I've measured this and it sort of varies from about 2mm at the top, sort of 3mm in the middle, and then almost down to 1 at the bottom. So I'm going to start off with some 2mm styrene. This is a piece of black 2mm styrene. I'll cut this to a rough shape, and then I'm going to stick another bit of 1mm styrene on top of it, and then I can shape the whole thing. As you can see, I've already marked it out. Basically I just took one of the good fins, laid it over the top, and have marked it with a pencil, so I can now start cutting this, and I'll just cut it until I get something that is about as close as I can get, and then I'll shape it with some files and sandpaper and stuff like that. So another piece that I just need to get cutting on. And here is the missile after all of that work, and you can see if I just rotate it around, it's actually very hard to spot the missing fin that I have now replaced. So what I ended up doing, as I say, was it was a 2mm thick piece of black styrene with a 1mm piece stuck on top of it. I then sanded it and shaped it. I ended up chopping off part of the broken part of the original fin on the missile because it was not quite the right angle. I plastic welded everything in place, and then to try and get the surface of the new bit of styrene to match, I then painted plastic weld over the top of the surface, and you can see it gives it this sort of shiny finish. And as you can see, it doesn't look too bad at all. If you get up close, you can just about see the join. There's a slight line there where the two pieces join, but from sort of most people's observations, I don't think they would spot this. And let's give it a test and see if it actually works. Okay, so we pull this section out, we can move that out of the way, we can move the flap out of the way that I've fixed. Here is the missile. I don't think it matters particularly which way round in it goes, so you can see there I've slotted that in, and we'll fire the missile and see what happens. Just like that, it fires out very nicely indeed. We'll do that one more time just so you can see it working. Do that again. Yeah, I think that's going to survive. The plastic weld joint between the two pieces is really very firm indeed. I really don't think you'd be able to break that. So there we go. That is the missile fixed. Toy-polloi. With the damaged wing mirror, I think what we've got to do is take this off, try and repair the top part which has snapped, and bend the bottom part back into shape. So first thing to do is to remove the door, and it looks like you can just pull these doors out by a careful bit of wiggling and pulling like that, and they unclip. I can see there's a little hole at the top there and a hole at the bottom, so there's two little posts either side that those clip into. So that's pretty easy to remove. With the door off, I can clearly see what I need to do to unhook the mirror, and I guess it's just to push on here. You would probably have to push that top bit as well. I can see that's snapped on this one, so I'm just going to push the bottom clip and see what happens. Oh yeah, there we go. So that's unclipped the bottom part of the wing mirror. Yeah, and this one, it has just been bent at that point. I reckon if we heat that up in some just boiled water, we should be able to bend that back to shape. If we can't, then I will have to sort of cut and break this and maybe use a bit of Lego to repair it. But I'm hoping just some freshly boiled water, dunk that in for a few seconds to warm up, and then I can bend that back. This top section here has snapped off, but it looks like it's snapped quite neatly. I can see that bit just left in the door there. I reckon I'll be able to push that out and then super glue that tiny piece back on. It doesn't look like it's particularly load bearing, so just a bit of super glue on that once we've straightened everything up should fix it. So yeah, first thing to do, I'm going to boil the kettle. I will dunk this in. Because this is chrome plated, I'm only going to try and put in the smallest part of it I can. So just this bit here I will dunk in. I have a feeling it might damage the chrome, but as you've seen, we have some paint to be able to sort of touch that up if it does. But I'm not going to submerge the whole thing, just that small section, warm it up, and then I'll bend it back to shape, and we'll see what happens then. If it breaks, we'll deal with that, but I think this should just bend quite nicely. I can't say that was the easiest of plastic to bend, but I have managed to do it with some gentle persuasion and some hot water. You can now see that is back to being straight. So we need to reattach this little broken off piece here at the top, which is, as I say, just stuck in the door. So I think if I push that out with a pair of tweezers, there it is. It's a tiny piece. I'm going to see if I can actually hold that with the tweezers and line it up onto here to see where it should line up. Oh yeah, that's not so bad. It's quite a neat break. So to glue that on, I'm just going to use a bit of super glue. I'll put some on a piece of paper here because it's going to be easier to actually sort of just dot this into the super glue than try and apply any onto it. So if I just dot some onto the end of that, I can then line this up on here. Just place the two pieces together like so. Now the chrome on this wing mirror is only partially sort of damaged, basically where it was bent, so that pole there has got a bit of the chrome missing. The rest of it doesn't look too bad at all, and for that I am going to be using the Molotow liquid chrome pen. I think these are pretty good for sort of small areas like this, especially on an area where you're not going to be able to touch it that much. So I'm just going to shake this pen up a bit, get the chrome nice and mixed, and then we'll just cover over that bit that's missing the chrome. As you can see, it really does a good job of just hiding those sort of little marks. You know, we can do the whole of the sort of pieces with it, but I find that Molotow chrome does take it takes a very long time to actually cure. You're talking a few weeks, and then even then it's still a little bit temperamental when you touch it. But on an area like this where you can't sort of really get your fingers onto it once it's sort of in place, you can get away with doing these little touch-ups. So I'm just going to do a few little touch-ups onto that area there, and you can see now it's actually quite hard to spot that that had been bent or damaged at all, and that top peg is now glued nicely in place. So we can stick this back on the door and put the door back onto the vehicle. The last thing I needed to do on the Rhino was reattach some of the stickers that had started peeling away. They weren't in a bad enough state to warrant replacing them completely, so all I've done is gone round with some Pritt stick and a small screwdriver, and I used the screwdriver to scrape little bits of Pritt stick glue off and then carefully stick that along the edges of the pieces that are unstuck. And on these stickers, some of them had started delaminating, so you've actually got a few layers to stick back down. You've got the under sort of paper piece and then the plastic coating on the top. So I've done it over all of the stickers on this and restuck them so that they're now sort of firmly back in place, and it makes a big difference. And certainly on this one I didn't need to go down the route of replacing all the stickers, but I have seen online there are people selling replacement stickers for the Rhino, so if you need them, go and check those out. And here is the finished Rhino. It's looking a whole lot better than it did when it arrived here. Everything is in place and everything looks as it should. And I've just had some packages that arrive from various sources. First up is my mat tracker that I bought off eBay. As I said, this is one without the helmet, but it will do the job for now. I think this cost a grand total of £5, so he can sit in the driver's seat there. Then I do need to say a massive thank you to Mark of M.A.S.K, who is on Instagram, because he got in touch and he very kindly sent me the helmet for Bruce Sato. So I now have a helmet for my Bruce Sato. He also included an Alex Sector to go in the back of the vehicle. He says this is the guy that mainly sits at the computer terminals on the back, so he sent me one of those as well. So I think now my Rhino is pretty much complete. At some point I may find the mask for map tracker, but at the moment it doesn't matter. I've got all the figures that I need. So let's check out the vehicle and I'll show you all the bits that we fixed and how they are working. The first thing we fixed was this flap on the top section of those sort of movable part of the back of the Rhino. If I pull this out, you can see we get into the computer terminals. This bit flaps up and then the stairs flap down at the side, and it was the hinge on this section that was broken. That was the easiest thing to fix. We also fixed the missile which had the broken fin, so that is also now working as well. I'll just fire that off, and you can see that works really quite nicely. Then if we turn the vehicle around, we have the rear section with the new lid that I've showed you earlier. That I'm really very pleased with. I think that really does do the job. On the right side we have the wing mirror that was busted, and that's all now looking quite good and sits exactly how it should do, and the ejector door still works. So we can eject the passenger if we need to. An area I didn't need to work on was this little ram at the front, so we can push that out. That all works very nicely still. We also didn't have to work on these sort of exhausts. They fold down. You can pull those out to one side and then they fold down to sort of, I guess, act as machine guns or missiles or something like that. So those still work. They're an area I didn't need to work on in this instance. So there we have it. That is the Rhino all repaired. This has been a really fun project, and it's a project that for me hasn't actually cost anything. I didn't have to buy any materials or buy any parts to get this fixed up, apart from the map tracker figure that I grabbed off eBay. Everything that has been worked on here has been made using parts that I already had, so just bits of styrene, a little bit of paint, as I said, that I had bought for another project, so that didn't cost anything, and some bits of Lego. It's amazing what you can do if you just feel a bit creative with what you have. have. You don't have to go out and spend lots of money. You can just make the pieces that you need. And certainly on things like this missile, a few bits of styrene and some plastic weld, you can get something that looks really nice. And the hatch at the back, as I've showed you, it doesn't look exactly like the original one, but it really does do the job. If you were to see this Rhino on a shelf in someone's display, you wouldn't notice that that had been replaced with something made out of styrene sheet. So for my collection, this sort of vehicle is absolutely perfect. It does exactly what it needs to do. It looks great, and that's really all that matters. And you can still play with it, and I'm sure I will be playing with this M.A.S.K Rhino in the future, because it is a really great fun toy. So I do need to say a massive thank you to John, who very kindly sent this in. It has been a really fun project to work on, and I can see me wanting to work on more M.A.S.K vehicles in future. So if you know of any M.A.S.K vehicles that have particular issues, then leave comments below, and I'll see if I can find some more and get to work on those. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.